Chat. Nonviolent communication, part 4.
Art Quattro, yeah.
This is the last part of the nonviolent communication series. With
Yep.
look at my hair. I look like
Uh,
it's better. All right. Part 4. Learning how to nonviolently communicate.
with Yellow Jackets specifically.
All right. What was part 4 again? What was the
So part four specifically is requests. So we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about what it is and isn't, which was kind of an overview, and it was in the first episode. And then we talked about making the right observations and how we're not trying to evaluate the person when we're observing the behavior that they're doing. We're trying to come up with an objective observation to tell them about. And then the second part was connecting that observation to a feeling. Like when I see you doing X, I feel Y. And then the third part was connecting that feeling to a need, because the theory behind NVC is that every feeling of ours that we feel is tied to a need of ours that isn't being met. And then the fourth is kind of really coming full circle and connecting back to essentially what you want the other person to do in order to make your life more enriched. So, I did see your comment, Luis, 100%. But yeah, so that's basically what it's about. I mean, in a nutshell, we're making requests of the person when obviously this could be in any situation. Usually it's in a situation where we're asking somebody to stop doing something, or we're telling them that something that they are doing is causing us some sort of sorrow or some sort of negative feeling. And then hopefully we're doing the extra legwork on our end where we're taking ownership for those feelings, those responsibility for those feelings, and then connecting that feeling to a need and taking responsibility for those needs as well. And basically reaching out to the person and saying, "Hey, so in action, basically, what is nonviolent communication as a whole is, hey, when you do X, and that observation is supposed to be without evaluation, so just objectively, when you do something, I feel, insert the feeling. We're trying to be specific too. So try to insert a feeling that's not happy, sad, angry, something more specific than that. Because my need of whatever is not being met, here's where you have to ask yourself questions and say, hey, what am I actually feeling? And when a feeling like that kind of comes to the surface and I become aware of it, what need of mine could possibly not be met, right? Compassion, connection, autonomy. It could be a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, whatever it may be, right? Typically in emotional relational problems, it's not, but just to throw it in as an example. So essentially, it's when you see X, Y, and Z, um, I feel this because my need isn't being met. Sorry, I had to mute alerts. And now, the last section of nonviolent communication essentially says, okay, so we've done all of that. We've recognized what the other person is doing. We have connected within ourselves to say, hey, I feel this way. We have done the extra legwork that usually, most folks don't do, and that's connecting the feeling to a need. And then now what we're doing is we're reaching out to the other person and we're telling them all of this, but we're also making a request for them to either, change their lifestyle or do something that is going to be more in line with our needs. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Obviously, you want to do it in a way that would help the person cross the bridge, where on the other side of the bridge, they're enriching your life. Um, One way we can do that, and one way that nonviolent communication preaches that we can do that, is by using positive affirmative language versus negative language. So a lot of the times we don't acknowledge that when somebody says, "Could you just fucking stop doing that?" We're not really certain what they want us to do. Like obviously in the scenario of when they're just snapping at us and saying, "I don't want you to do that," you can probably infer what you don't want them to do. But in a situation where we're trying to create an empathetic and compassionate connection with somebody, it really helps for us, specifically the request store, to use positive action language. So it's basically telling them what we would rather them to do versus what we don't want them to do. Um, so negative requests usually provoke resistance. Um, I mean, think about the last time somebody told you stop doing that or knock it off, right? Negative requests usually people take it as an infringement upon their autonomy. You're saying don't do that, but you go, but I want to do that, or I chose to do that, or whatever, right? They don't exude the type of empathy and compassion we're trying to build with nonviolent communication. So you want to ask it in a positive way. You want to say, can you do this? It would help me immensely if you did this. In the future, can you do this? Right? We don't want to say stop doing that, or I hate it when you do that, or quit it when you do that. And it's going to take some practice because we've been conditioned as a society to tell people what we want in negatives, speaking kind of like in backwards riddles. Like, I don't want you to do that. And then the learned person would say, well, what do you want me to do? And a lot of the times, the requester, when they're not good with nonviolent communication, will kind of reel back and say, well, I don't actually know what I want you to do. I know what I don't want you to do because society has told me what I don't want you to do, and society has taught me how to communicate what I don't want you to do very well, in fact. Um, but it's the part of the conversation that you want me to change my behavior and putting that in a positive spin and saying, I would like you to do this because that will help me meet my own needs or help me meet my needs. So the request section is literally going to be a positively affirmative section versus you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, because negatives breed resistance, and negatives by resistance that breeds resentment, and it makes people think that you're infringing upon their autonomy, basically. Um, so avoiding asking from somebody, from refraining to do that. So um, in a full sentence, it's, hey, when, you know, from a mother to a son, for example, hey, when I see all the toys strewn up across the floor, when I walk into the room, the common area, um, I feel anxious and I feel frustrated because I'm just going into a mother's shoes. From a mother's perspective, they have a need to keep the house clean. And
Mama
from anybody's
Michael.
perspective, they have a need to keep a house clean. What?
Said Mama Michael.
I know, right? Exactly. No, I mean, because a lot of the times, a lot of the things that I learned from NVC, I always put into my own life, and I would say, well, how would it have been better for me to hear something from my mom in this way versus the way that it was communicated? And that's not me bagging on my mom. I don't think parents, there's no fucking book on how to be a parent, right? But it's interesting to have the perspective shift when you look at it from an adult perspective and say, hey, I've learned all of these good communication styles, and um it from that perspective, it's really interesting because, again, the process itself helps you really connect with the other individual and help them enrich their own life. So I see the toys on the ground, I feel anxious and frustrated because one of my needs isn't being met, which could be anything, which could be need for a clean house, need for a tidy place, whatever. And you help the child understand that, and then the request would be, not, could you not leave your toys around? Because the kid's like, okay, I can't leave my toys around, and you're kind of infringing upon my autonomy for doing things. It would be helpful if you would clean up the toys when you're done playing with them, would be the request. And initially you're like, oh, that's easy, I can fucking do that. But when you're in the line of fire and you're like in the fray of it and you're like, oh, what do I say? What do I do to somebody? It's hard. It really is, because a lot of people, um, it's just difficult. The way that we've been taught to communicate, it's not even a people problem. It's really kind of a societal issue. It's the way we've been taught to communicate really does not have us speaking in positive action, affirmative language before. So it might take a few tries, but I think it's really worth it.
Yeah, we all live a life where, especially being in America, when you want something, you want it now, and you want to achieve that now. And so, um, you have to get rid of that ideology, and you have to also obtain control over your own reactions to your emotions. So, whenever you're approaching, because this is the action part of the nonviolent, this is where you're actually communicating. The other
Yeah.
three parts are sort of
A
like
lot of
a
self-awareness. Yeah.
preparation step to get there, which will help you in turn when doing the action part. But at the end of the day, you have to, because even if you are feeling angry or feeling anxious or whatever you may be feeling, you have to be at a point where that's not controlling your reaction or your actions. So when you're communicating to whoever it is, as opposed to instantly being angry because you feel angry or speaking angry because you feel angry, you have to be able to distance yourself from those emotions. And sometimes that takes time. So instead of wanting it right then and there or approaching it instantly, sometimes you have to know how to set the boundary to take that time. So, like, if you walk in and the trash isn't taken out and you expect your boyfriend to take out the trash and you've been compiling the trash for over a week just waiting for them to take it out, right? And then finally you see him walk in and he just throws something else onto the pile, you may react really angrily or approach it and communicate in a very mad way, but instead you might need to just take time to step back and approach it in a positive way and express your need in a positive way, because your need might be that act of service. And even though it's such a small thing like taking out the trash, for you or for your significant other, it could be a really big act of service. And also, you could just take out the trash to avoid the entire thing.
And I think for the conversation from somebody who's looking for somebody to take out the trash would be, hey, when I see the trash overflowing, or when I see the trash, whatever, overflowing, you could argue is a term that's used to make an evaluation. But when I see the trash is full, period, I get really, whatever it is, I can't speak for somebody else, right? For me, if I have a need to take the trash out, it's going to be anxiety. A lot of the times it's going to be, sadness that it's not taken out. So a lot of the times it's, hey, when I see the trash that's full and overflowing or full, whatever you want to say, I feel anxious because my need for a cleanly house or a clean kitchen or a tidy place in which to live is not being met. Would you apply more care to the times that you take the trash out? Or even more specifically, which is the next step of making requests, would you take out the trash when you see that it's full, or would you take out the trash on a weekly basis or on a daily basis, whatever you want to actually tell them? What you don't want to say is, hey, when I see this trash, and do all that work and say, hey, I feel anxious because my need for a tidy place isn't being met. And then right at the back end of it, you go, could you not let the trash overflow? Right? Because the person's going to be like, well, I can let the trash not overflow. They might insinuate that you want them to take out the trash, but you made them do extra mental gymnastics. And in a lifestyle where we're already kind of speaking in riddles and not being to the point and not being completely open and stuff like that, it's really difficult to add another layer of obfuscation on top of that, right? Because why would you? If you could be clear, right? I would like you to take the trash out when it's full, basically, is the non-violent way of saying that. That's actually a normal way of saying it. It's not, don't let the trash get full. Don't do this, don't do that. Don't make a mess. Don't let the house, kind of get overflowed and just get dirty. So I kind of touched upon the other aspect of making the request, one of which is positive affirmative action, and positive affirmative meaning not in a negative connotation, meaning not in a don't, but in a do. So don't tell me what not to do. Tell me what to do, and I will change my behavior. The other side of it, or the next step of the request portion, is being specific with your request. Because when you're not specific, you leave too much to guess and the person becomes confused. So I'll give you an example. Like somebody who's had a rough day at work, who really just wants some kind of connection. Exactly, Marquise, who really just wants some kind of connection from her husband or from his wife or from, her wife or his husband, regardless, from their significant other. And they sit down and they say, I would really like you to show me that you love me. Now, what does that really mean? To somebody really piggybacking off of Casual's 5 love languages, that could mean a multitude of different things. That could mean giving me a massage. That could mean getting me a gift. That could mean hugging me. That could mean fucking. That could mean listening to me. That could mean spending time together. That could be so many different things. So when you're not specific and you're ambiguous, you're not expressing yourself in a way that's realistic for the other person to say, oh, that's something that I can do. A more realistic way of saying, I would like you to show me that you love me, a concrete way, and it's going to sound weird because we're not taught to talk this way, but the way to do it would be look inside yourself, obviously be aware of what you need, and whether it's, for example, I'll take 2 of them. Physical touch is one, and then Um, quality time is another one, right? So if you know yours is physical touch or quality time, you could say it in a way that says, "Would you hug me right now? Are you comfortable with hugging me right now? What I really need right now is a hug. Can you hug me right now?" Versus, "Can you just show me that you love me?" Right?
Right.
Because what you're asking for, the other person can't read your mind, right? They don't know what you need in that moment. You said, "Oh, I need love." Well, that's not specific enough, right? I'm sorry, it just isn't. So can you hug me, or can you just sit on the couch and listen to me for 5 minutes while I talk about my day? That's fair too, right? Because then that person goes, yeah, I can 100% do that, right? And when you kind of open up your mind in this way and say, okay, well, I'm speaking in positive affirmative actions and I'm being specific to the point. I'm not just saying, show me that you love me or make me happy or whatever it is. Um, it really, you start to understand, like, this is the way I can communicate to my partner. And it gets easier. It's hard in the beginning, but it gets easier. Um, if you have a person who asks for a multitude of things without applying the same effort themselves on the same request, is that toxic behavior? I mean,
That depends.
really, it
Are
really
you
depends.
That's like
So
if someone wants you to take out the trash, right? And they don't take out the trash themselves. That all depends on if it matters to you.
yeah.
That
And that's
doesn't.
and that responsibility kind of lies on. So the example of taking out the trash, because it's an easy one. If you all of a sudden say, hey, I'd like you to take out the trash, and then or the other person, for example, is asking you, and you start doing it, and you like them to come take out the trash, well, I mean, that's also something you can approach with nonviolent communication. When I'm taking out the trash 100% of the time, when I'm the only one taking out the trash, a little bit of evaluation in there. There could be some tone in there. What's a good way we can put it?
You can say
Mm,
when basically it feels like I've been the only
no,
one doing this.
because then you're saying it feels like, and you're not really feeling anything. You're observing something and then telling them what you've seen. I'm telling you, it's really
How do you
hard because we're
approach it?
not taught to do this. Um,
I would feel happier
Start with
if
an
we
observation. So
took turns.
how could you observe that you're the only one taking out the trash? I honestly think you can say I'm the only one taking out the trash, or I'm the one doing
If it
the
is
trash taking
factual,
out
if it
specific.
is factual,
If it is factual, if it's a legitimate thing, if you are literally the only one taking out the trash, you might say that, and you might say it makes me feel angry, or whatever it is, mad, or whatever you feel,
frustrated,
because my need of, that could be a lot of things. That could be um,
balance.
equity, balance in the relationship, right? In interdependence, being able to depend on the other person, right? Walking in and saying, well, the trash has overflowed. I know it's my job, but she's been here all fucking day. Why couldn't she do it, right? Those are the kind of conversations that we have in our minds, right? So then it's up to you to come and say, okay, I know I'm doing the trash, right? But it would also make me feel better if there was an interdependent communication between us that says, hey, when the trash is full, someone should take it out. The end, right? So I think the answer to your question, John, is going to be it's another conversation that you can have. I wouldn't necessarily label it as a toxic behavior. I would just say that there's a conversation that could be had, and maybe there could be some toxicity behind the behavior. I don't exactly know. But yeah, I would say that um, it really yearns a conversation to be had about that subject, because you can have your own nonviolent way of seeing it, and you can express your emotions and your needs in a way that says, hey, I would like some help with the chores around the house. Because that's essentially what you're asking for, right? You're asking for balance. You're asking for help with the chores around the house.
Or a
So,
system. But you
um,
have to communicate that. Now,
exactly. You can't mind read, and that's why I'm saying in the request portion of it to be very specific and not to be
if you feel like
to
it's
not be
toxic
general, right?
behavior,
Because again, you can miscommunicate it, and what is love to me is not love to somebody else. What is make me happy to me is not make me happy to somebody else, right? Somebody else would be wonderful, whatever, going, and I don't know what the fuck they'd be interested in doing, whereas I wouldn't be interested in doing that, right? So it's really just about balance and communicating. So,
yeah. So if you feel like it's toxic behavior, then
but yeah.
it can be considered,
Um,
especially if it doesn't
and
stop
kind of the
after
final
you
portion
communicate
about
it.
requests specifically is really, because what a request is basically, what nonviolent communication is basically, is you're opening up yourself and you're giving the other person the opportunity to enrich your life. And the perspective should be that that's a really beautiful and whole and connected thing to do. That is really a great good, wonderful thing to do is because you're opening yourself up and you're saying, I'm giving you the blueprint of what is going to make life more thriving for me and what is going to make life more enriching for me. So when you are requesting something from somebody else, make it almost as if you're giving them the opportunity to make your life better. So you have to voice the request in a not a demanding way, because what demands do is they implicitly like threaten punishment. Because when you demand somebody to do something, they go, well, fuck, I don't want to not do it because then they're going to be mad or whatever. And then the neurological link is made forever that every time they do that, they go, well, I got to keep fucking doing this or else Michael's going to lose his shit. And what happens in that instance is resentment is built. And you're not getting that person to do something for the right reasons. Or if they are doing that thing, like I said, they're growing in hatred for you in the back end, and that's not what we want, right? At the end of the day. Um, so you want them to comply willingly. You want them to come to a point of understanding and empathy and compassion where you say, "Hey, you know how I feel. You know what needs of mine aren't being met. I would really like for you to do X, Y, and Z." And it's up to kind of the person bringing up the topic and the person that's fluent in nonviolent communication to guide that request in a way that it really is not a demand. It's, you know, a request should be something that you ask somebody where if they say no, it's okay. That's what the request should be. And you're obviously saying, well, if they can say no, well, why am I asking in the first place? Well, there's a bunch of questions that come out after that you can really dive into after that, right? If they're not open to showing you love in a specific legitimate way that you've asked, well, then why aren't they, right? Then that's another conversation to have, right? Nonviolent communication a lot of the times isn't the ending, right? It is the way to unlock the other conversations that people haven't really had. So real shit, hell yeah. That's why I don't independently read books because school forces us to read, so turn me off completely. I hate it here. No, I don't mind. I don't mind you, Marcus. I get that. I get that, Marquise. What should one do if you have to consistently beg for communication, but instead they just throw manipulation phrases at you? Um, Instead they just throw manipulation phrases at you. I mean, a lot of the times the question in that sense becomes, is it worth communicating? Now I don't know specifics of that situation, but I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes you're just not going to get to a point where because what nonviolent communication preaches is both people should be open to enriching each other's lives, basically. And if the other party can't come to the table, so to speak, and barter and talk and be vulnerable and take ownership and be aware, it kind of becomes difficult. You can do the heavy lifting on the nonviolent communication side for them. You can kind of listen to what they say and kind of pull things out for them and stuff like that. And that all comes to a question of, well, do you want to do that for that person? Right? If it's your child or something, you might have to because they don't know nonviolent communication. If it's, your significant other or something, it might behoove of them to go and look into nonviolent communication in order to express themselves more effectively.
Can you make her be quiet?
But yeah, I mean, it really just depends on the situation. So it really just depends. Good question though.
I'm so glad you're taking the lead on this.
Because you're just on Yellow Jacket planet right now?
No, there's Yellow Jackets and there's moths, and then my daughter's like in the other room just screaming at the top of her lungs for I don't even know what she's screaming about. And like Rachel's gonna go to the store to get Yellow Jacket trap so that I can put it in here so that if they fly around they might just get trapped and I don't even have to deal with it. And she went to leave and left Eden alone, and that's why she was screaming. And I was like, dude, like,
wow, that's a lot.
You can just hear it, and I'm just oh,
that's a lot.
In VCs, it's okay. Michael's
Have you tried to nonviolently communicate with the Yellow Jackets to stop?
Yeah, I just did at the beginning, and he's been. Oh yeah, he's still just sitting right, wiggling his little butt around on the ceiling fan. So
this is a disaster. Poor casual. I know, right?
I'm
sweet talk your girl into doing all the chores. Yeah, I mean, like I said, some people love chores. Like I like vacuuming, and
And I was trying to talk
nothing.
earlier,
and
I had myself muted.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, I don't know if he knows he's fucking muted. I
No, I
can't
don't
hear
even
anything.
remember
I'm
what I was
gonna
trying to
keep
talk
going.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, you've got this. You're taking lead. We're gonna get lots of good clips.
No, I mean that's essentially it was kind of a short and quick wrap up to NVC, but I mean there are three really important points. You want to use positive affirmative action language. You don't want to tell the other person what not to do. You want to tell them what to do. Um, you want to make requests that are specific. You don't want to be like, "Oh, I just want you to love me. I want you to have a sense of responsibility," which I hear a lot of fucking parents say, and I have a bone to pick with those parents. But I just want you to have a sense of responsibility when in reality they just want their fucking kids to be obedient. Okay? That's not going to be good for anybody. So you want to have requests that are specific in nature that the other side can actually practice and use. And then finally, you want to make requests instead of demands. You want to serve it up on a platter that says, hey, this is what I'm showing you as a way for you to enrich my life. And it would be wonderful and amazing and ecstatic and affectionate and compassionate and empathetic and all the good things in life if you could just come together with me right now and listen to what I need and what needs of mine are being met. So
Yeah.
combine that with the other purposes or the other steps of the process, and you have something like observation, feeling, need, request, OFNR. And if you know the process well enough, that you're able to think, I mean, in the beginning, you're not going to be able to, right? Right now, in the clinical aspect of the classroom and all this other stuff, like we can talk about NVC all day long, but when you're actually in it, in the situation, it becomes really fucking hard. So what you need to do is you need to continuously put yourself in that situation where you can pull out your little NVC checklist and you'll fuck up a couple times and you'll trip over your own feet and you won't say things the right way and something will come out and you go, "Oh, that's not what I wanted to say." Right? Like for example, a lot of the things that I struggle with specifically is um transforming observations into feelings. Like, I feel angry when you X. I don't, or that's a good one, weirdly enough. But like, for example, I feel like you don't give me enough attention. When in reality, that's not what we feel. That's what we think the other person's doing. They're not giving us enough attention. We might feel sad or anxious or depressed or whatever it might be, but we don't actually feel the fact that they don't give us attention, right? That's something I struggle with a lot. I'll say I feel, and then right afterwards will come an observation, not my actual feelings. So you'll have to wade into the waters, into the uncomfortability waters a couple times, and you'll have to trip over your own feet, and you'll have to fuck up, and hopefully the people that you're doing nonviolent communication with are not toxic and they're actually open to communicating and open to realizing what's going on and open to taking ownership for some of those things. And really, at the end of the day, it really is just a language of life and a language of connectivity and empathy and compassion. We are just trying to communicate a way that we can make each other's lives more enriching by acting more in line with each other's needs. That's it. So,
And to approach that part of the action part of communicating your needs, a lot of the times you will, and I know I'm not the only one, you will be thinking like something, you talk in your head, you have this narrative like, oh, they're making me do this or this and this, or they did this, and then you never speak on it. Instead of never speaking on it, take time to prepare, to prepare yourself emotionally, to take, you may need to sit down and breathe, you may need to go on a walk or something like that, find a healthy distraction. But once you found that and
yeah,
you're in a better, calmer mindset, and
yeah,
they're in a calm mindset, that's the
yeah,
perfect time to approach that nonviolent communication. So you don't always, like I said, you don't always have to have it right then and there. It doesn't have to happen right
yeah.
away. So like,
Fun fact, this is the fourth NVC, right?
yeah.
The book has 12 chapters. So we've gone through four of them. The other 12 are about the things that go on in life where we may not be they're about really rounding out and sanding down NVC into like a perfect art form, but they're also one chapter specifically about what if I cannot get into the mental state of being in an NVC like state. Well, basically what Casual has said, you do whatever you need to do. You have a responsibility to yourself to be connected to yourself and you do whatever it is that you need to do. Maybe you need to take a walk, maybe you need to go sit in nature, maybe you need to go, I don't know, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. But sometimes, yeah, So sorry to interrupt. I just felt like that
Oh no,
was
you're good.
insightful.
So yeah, I think approaching all of that is important. The action part is important. Taking those steps. Communication is love. So like, if you care about someone or love someone, whether it's your friend, your spouse, your parents, um, if you really do love them, you'll communicate with them because that's a part of what
Exactly.
love
That's what you
is.
want,
And
right?
communication is descriptive and it's real. It's not faking it till you make it. It's not bending over backwards to make someone else feel comfortable. It's having the uncomfortable conversations. And it's an understanding that even through those uncomfortable conversations, you will still care about the person in the long run.
Yeah.
And
And you'll grow.
sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes you won't stay in a relationship or you won't um
Come find
ag-
common ground or
yeah, you won't
something.
agree or you won't find
One
um
of the acceptable responses to a request that you make at the end of an NVC that you should have in your head as an acceptable response is no. That's the whole point of a request. Because if you don't accept no as an answer, or you don't accept the negative portion of the possibility as of an answer, negative as in no as in negative, maybe you wanted them to say no. In that case, think of it as them saying yes. You you if you don't accept both sides of it, you're basically making a demand. And if they do what you're asking out of a demanding state, then they're gonna fucking hate you for it.
yep.
That's just as real as it gets, man. They're just gonna fucking hate you for it. Think about every time that your parents made you clean your room with no good reason. Like there's a reason, right? But they never found it, right? They're just like clean your room because whatever. I'm a parent and I have fucking autonomy over you, basically. You hated them. I did, right? I fucking did. I couldn't stand it. I was like, why? If somebody came in and said, listen, there's a psychological link, and obviously I'm small, right? I'm a small boy, so like a lot of the times when they come in and you can't talk about psychology with a fucking 5 year old, right? But there's a way you can dumb it down to where you're asking them to do it out of a respect and out of a necessity and out of an enrichment for the parents' lives as much as their own. You can say, I have a need for you to clean your room because we have a need to keep a house clean and tidy. And in fact, did you know, Michael, that if you do chores and tasks in a clean room, it's been shown that you are in a better mood, that you're in a better place mentally, and that you can get more things done in a positive manner than if you're in a dirty space. So, can we can you make a bigger effort into cleaning the room? If my parents even tried to have that conversation with me, and I'm not bagging on my parents or anything, this is just an example of cleaning a room, it would be so much easier for me to understand why we have to do those types of things. And obviously, I was a small boy, so like you would have to say that 20 fucking times for me to get it into my head. But eventually, you raise up somebody who says, "Oh, I should clean a room because I feel better when I'm in a clean space." Right? They walk in the room, they go, "Wow, it's like there's so much space for activities, you know? Because a lot of the times the clean room aspect is like what's inside here is usually manifested outside, and you come into a room and if it's dog shit everywhere, you're like, well, okay, your life is, So either way, I think it's really an important point. So
Yeah, if you want to have a better understanding of your own mental health, one thing, my brother's gone and seen a lot of therapists and whatnot. He had like sleep paralysis and past traumas and stuff like that, and therapy has helped him overcome a lot of it. But one thing that he learned that helps him a lot to understand where he is at mentally, because a lot of the times, like, we'll be depressed or upset or whatever it may be, and we won't even acknowledge the where we're at. We won't even know that we're depressed, or we won't know how we're feeling. He has house plants, like indoor plants that you have to take care of, and there's specific things you have to do to take care of them. And he said that basically, like, he'll have those plants around the house, and they help him aesthetically, and his relationship with his plants helps him. But it also helps him to acknowledge that, like, if his plants are dying, it's because his mental health isn't where it needs to be.
yeah,
Because if
that's
you're
fair.
not keeping
That's
up
really
with
good.
those things,
Yep.
then so like that's a really big way. Like if you guys really want to be able to keep track and have kind of a tracker, just get houseplants.
Japanese peace lily.
and it can be whatever kind you like, that it can be aesthetically pleasing for you, and
Mhm.
it's something to take pride in, being able to take care of your plant and everything, and you can approach that and be like, oh wow, like my plant's dying. um, what am I doing in my life that I could be doing differently, to where I could be making this time for these plants and whatnot, right? Like I
Right.
could be doing better for them, and
Right.
in turn, that's what you end up
You do better for yourself.
figuring
Yeah.
out is,
No, that makes
oh
sense.
yeah, look at that. Like, yeah, maybe I'm depressed. Maybe I need to do this different, or approach this different, or I need more time to myself, because that time where you're taking care of your plants is also um, time to yourself. That is like meditative, because
It
you're
is.
focused
Yeah.
on feeding your plants. You're focused on taking care of them. I'm sure there's a lot more than just watering plants to taking care of indoor plants. I wouldn't know. I don't have indoor plants. That's not something that I personally do, but it is something that he does and helped him. So,
Definitely.
which Jesus
Eh,
says, is marijuana a good plant? Asking for a friend. If you live in a
Oh,
legal state,
the
fuck yeah,
best, dude.
why not?
Haley says NBC is hard to perfect. A lot of the time, what we say is not how the other person is going to perceive it, and that's why we have to be patient with the person we're communicating with. 100%. Josh asks, do you guys know anyone that does NBC well? That is a tough question. My therapist. But she's been around the block, so to speak, for 20 something years. So, I mean, she's gone to school and she's LMFT and she listens to people every day with issues and she's a professional. Other than that, I mean, I'd like to think I do it well in quotes, but we're all kind of human and we have to be compassionate with ourselves as well and be like, yo, like sometimes I'm not going to be able to NVC about everything. And sometimes NVC is not going to be applicable to everything, right? You have to get to a point where you're not trying to vice grip NVC into every situation. Because I was like that. When I learned this tool, I was like, oh my God, I can use NVC everywhere. I can get somebody to really like enrich my life at any point at any time. But in reality, like it's a tool that's selective in its usage. And when you get to a point where you're kind of in that happy equilibrium, happy medium, and you kind of are flowing through life a little bit, and you go, okay, this is a place where some of my needs aren't being met. That's typically where NVC is used the best. I could use NVC in this particular instance. So, I mean, kind of a cop out answer, Josh. I don't think anybody's like really amazingly great at it. Like the guy who NVC is coined by Marshall Rosenberg, and there are examples in his book where he doesn't even do NVC properly. Like there was literally an example I was reading back about the request section, which is what we're talking about right now, or we're talking about it as a whole, but that's what the majority of the podcast was about requests. And he was like, I was on a what did he say? He was on a talk show with somebody who was pro war, and he's obviously pro peace and pro communication and anti war. So he was talking to this guy about pro war, anti war, and he dove into a place that he didn't really want to go. He was kind of standoffish and he was a smartass about it. So when he went home and he watched back the broadcast, he was like, well, fuck, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z, right? And we just learned that you don't want to, even with yourself, you don't want to communicate to yourself, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. You want to communicate to yourself that you want to do this. You want to remain connected. You want to remain grounded. You want to remain compassionate, right? So even the guy who coined the phrase has trouble at times nailing down what's required to properly do NVC correctly in an enriching fashion. So I think there's a definitely like a sliding scale of people who are good at NBC. I think you can become good at NBC. I don't think it's applicable in every situation. And I also think you need to have that self-compassion to say, hey, I'm not going to be that non-violently communicative today. Like, I just don't have it in me. So I feel like you have responsibility to yourself, along with the person you care about, to show them that nonviolent communication. If you need time in heated moments and you know that, make that known before you hit those moments. Reassure that it's for you to gather your thoughts. No, 100%. No, 100%, Haley. That's definitely it. And there's a whole, if we ever get into a point where we're kind of cherry picking topics and we get to another NVC topic, there's a whole section we can do about things you can do when you're not ready for NVC. How to check in with yourself and say, hey, am I in a good spot to communicate with somebody right now? Can I really hear their side of the story? Am I able to express myself efficiently? Am I going to be able to connect to myself in a way where I can express my feelings and needs in a good manner? Or am I just going to obfuscate and talk about how they make me feel stuff and not take responsibility for my feelings? So I think that that's a really good point.
Yeah.
What should I do if I communicated that I am too angry to affect? I got a lot of questions, my bad. What should I do if I communicated that I'm too angry to effectively communicate and they don't honor that? It just frustrates me even more. What would you do? I feel like I've tried everything.
Take a
If
step
you,
away.
yeah, I mean, it's just take a step away.
Healthy
If you
distraction.
if you communicated that you're too angry to effectively communicate and they don't honor that,
That's not your
I
responsibility.
that's not your responsibility, number one. That's a good point. And number two, I don't know who the person is in your life, but if they're not going to honor you needing that time to become more connected and in tune with yourself, um,
Still give yourself that time.
yeah, still give yourself that time. So,
And if you're needing help figuring out distractions, you can go over to our YouTube, Confidecast on YouTube,
yeah,
hit the subscribe button, and there is an episode on distractions where all we talk about the entire episode is healthy distractions. And
exactly.
these can be used in any situation where maybe you're dealing with anger, sadness, whatever it may be, and you need to simmer down your emotions. I highly recommend looking into that episode and finding it out because there's a lot of substance in that that helps people daily with these issues. I think it's important to take care of yourself over everything. And, sometimes you're not going to be able to communicate with people and they're not going to understand. And it's not your job to make them understand. And that's not to say that later you can't talk to them after you've calmed down. But even then, like if they're not going to be reasonable, then just acknowledge your boundaries and how far you're willing to let someone step outside of your boundaries before you have to cut them off. Because sometimes in life you have to cut people out of your life. Sometimes that just happens.
Yeah, that just happens. Yeah.
No, Paul says just being a little more mindful has avoided so many situations that before I would have turned into fights that instead were just productive conversations. Being me and Karen that made us stronger. You have to have the emotional awareness and control when talking to other people. Yeah, awareness is a really big thing, and it's a big word. And like one thing my therapist, and one thing that you'll learn in the distractions episode over on YouTube is
a little plug.
Just like you have to assess every single thought throughout each day. Acknowledge. It could be like, you could be like, man, I really enjoyed that taco that I had for lunch, but I wish it had more cheese. Be aware of the thought and where you put it. So it can be a simple thought, and be aware of how your brain works and just keep acknowledging this is how I approach simple things. And then also when I'm emotional or like I'm approaching something emotional, be aware and make it a point to be aware of those things you're feeling emotionally and what you should be filtering out and what you should be distancing yourself from. Because the key to controlling yourself and not letting your emotions control you is putting distance between yourself and your emotions. That's not to say you're ignoring your emotions. You have to be aware of your emotions, but this is probably one of my favorite analogies is your emotions are basically hold them in a snow globe type deal. Like if you're feeling something, understand that you have control over that and it's not you, it's inside of this snow globe and you can shake it up and you can do whatever you want with those feelings, but that's not what's inside the snow globe isn't gonna make your decisions and it's not gonna make you do something. It's not going to control you. You have control and you have your emotions here and you know what they are, right? And for anyone else that's interested in these tidbits and wants more of a short-sighted thing, we do Confidecast every week, and the long, we can go an hour to 2.5 hours on episodes. We've done it many times, and the full episodes are posted on YouTube for anyone that wants to listen, and eventually we'll put them on Spotify and other platforms. But if you want short, like just little bites, like maybe you're going through your day and you just want a subtle mental health reminder, you can actually go over to my TikTok, Casual69er, and Confide's TikTok, and both of our Instagram accounts. And every single day we're posting small snippets of not only these podcast episodes, but I'll even post just daily thoughts of things that I have that motivate me and help me with my mental health that could help you. And if you want like just little small bites instead of 2 hour sessions, I highly recommend going over to those other social media platforms and following us there. Both Confide, me, Michael has a TikTok as well. And we'll be putting, I don't know what just happened. That was weird. But yeah, we'll be putting our content over there.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that I always mention every episode is, I need to pull it up real quick. For those of you who know me, you know I am a very big mental health advocate, but I'm also a musician, and a big part of my existence in life is music. And one of my biggest helpful things with my distractions is playing, listening to music, or singing to music that I enjoy that helps me with my mental health. And you can be a part of that journey. Let me get to Michael's stream real quick so that I can put it in there too. I am posting a link to the chat. I will right now to our mental health playlist on Spotify. This is for anyone to add to. It can be any kind of music that makes you just feel anything. It could make you feel happy. It could make you feel angry or understand your emotions with anger. It could have a whole lot of those parts of your existence. And you can take that and just run with it and have music to help you through. And when you're adding music to that, you're helping a lot more people than you know. And so Spotify, all our other plugs, definitely go subscribe to the YouTube. And I think this one was a lot shorter because it's just kind of short and sweet and to the point.
Yeah, we're kind of wrapping it up. I mean, it's OF&R, right? Observation, feeling, need, and request. So if you have OF&R in your back pocket and you understand the little nuances inside OF&R, like observations, we want to observe without evaluating. We don't want to be like, when the house looks disgusting, like that's an evaluation. You're saying the house looks disgusting, and there's a tonality that's applied to the person for being responsible for the house being disgusting, right? Things like that, little nuances. With the request, you want to be positive, right? You don't want to be in a negative connotation. But once you have that OF&R and you understand those little nuances, it becomes not an end all be all, but it becomes a little tool in your tool chest that you can take out and you can really use effectively. I think communicating that you need to calm down so that you can communicate effectively is a big thing to be able to recognize, and your partner should respect that. 100% agree. If you communicate while you're angry, especially after communicating, you were too angry to communicate, that's going to make matters worse in most cases and likely you feel yeah, 100%. No, it really is. You should have a mutual respect to say, hey, like this person can't talk right now, or they can't, like I have moments where I'm overwhelmed by situations where I just need to take a step back. Whether that's I go out and I stand on my balcony and I smoke a joint, or I go and I watch Facebook or whatever it is, right? I just need some time from disconnection. And, my significant other, the wonderful person that she is, she's totally fine with that, right? She might be going through her own stuff at the time, but still, like, my need for that disconnection is met with acceptance and with understanding. So I guess in a way, you have to understand that NVC is not 100% foolproof, and that when it fails, it doesn't mean you failed. 100% true. NVC is just a tool. Just because it fails or because the other person, you could be the best NVCer on this side of the world, and you could do everything. You could do the heavy lifting for the other person. You could say, this is what you're doing that's making me annoyed. You could say everything in the right manner. You could connect the feeling to a need. You can say the request positively without making a demand and very specifically, and they could still not understand it, right? That doesn't mean that you failed. That just means that that person may not be in a place where they can accept that, right? They might be in a different portion of their life. It might just be a day thing. It might just be having a shitty day, right? So NVC is something I learned in my last relationship, and I can say that trying to separate the emotional logic makes a difference. Actually, get your points across 100%. Hearts gaming. Yes, Haley, 100%. To everyone, if no one told you today, how truly important in your life. Appreciate it, Nader. Much love. Appreciate you, man. Much love. We're not playing Dead by Daylight, but it is what it is. We're just tagging it as Dead by Daylight because Facebook algorithm blows.
Whoever you're trying to nonviolently communicate with may not be fully matured in life.
Yeah.
They may not understand things. They may not be nonviolent communicating at all. They might be violently communicating only.
Yeah.
And that is going to segue us into our next episode, which we'll probably do next week or in the future. The next one I do with Michael will be boundaries. And
Ooh,
that's going to be a
love
really big
that.
episode because that's a really big part of understanding when to cut people out and when, like, prioritizing taking care of yourself and understanding
Yeah.
your own boundaries and staying inside of your own boundaries yourself, but also not allowing other people to step outside of the boundaries that you
Yeah.
have for your own mental
And
health. And
and
that's
society's expectations with boundaries
it's very
and
important.
how we've kind of been conditioned to thinking that setting your own boundaries for your own mental health kind of feels gross because all of a sudden because you've had this right when you set a boundary either implicitly or explicitly the person kind of pulls away and they go whoa I didn't realize that blah 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 right and then suddenly you feel bad right you go fuck like I enforced a boundary which is supposed to be good it's supposed to be mental health positive supposed to be enriching for my own life but why do I feel this kind of shame that I forced them to do that right we'll dive into that as well and kind of the different nuances and how we've kind of brought up understanding boundaries in our culture and why it's actually amazing to instill boundaries and to um, really understand where that line is drawn. Because if
Yeah.
you don't, and people are just infringing upon your boundaries again, you just resentment grows, and
Which
that's not
even
something you
that
want in
plays
a
into
relationship.
we've done 10 episodes so far. This is the 11th episode, and every single episode has had a sense of resonating with any other episode we've done. And it resonates just with like our confidence episode. I had an episode with a confidence coach who's a published author on, he sells his books on Amazon and he's a life coach and all. He's very, very good dude. And if you are interested in listening to that episode, it's also on our YouTube and it's under the episode I think is just called like confidence or something like that. And if you struggle with confidence, I highly recommend listening to it. There's a lot of good juicy information in there, and just understand that a part of being confident, a part of being who you are, is setting boundaries. And if there's someone in your life that doesn't allow you to set those or makes you feel a certain way because you set boundaries, that's manipulative behavior, and you are allowed to have boundaries.
Yeah.
And
No, JC said in chat how people react and respond to you setting boundaries is not your responsibility.
yep.
And that's a big awareness type of life lesson that you learn eventually because essentially what happens is you set the boundary and then they go, I don't really fucking wanna. And then you go, sorry, right? Eventually you get to a point where you're so not confident, but you're so just content with the fact that you're connected to yourself and this is your boundary that saying it is just happenstance. It's just, yeah, this is my boundary. And if the other person wants to react negatively to it, let them react negatively to it. Um, so eventually, I hope for everybody, that our content touches, I hope that everybody's in that position at some point where they can safely set a boundary. And even if the person has a negative response to it, it's fine because it's not our responsibility to make them feel okay. Because what you're saying is your behavior needs to either be curtailed or stop entirely because you're infringing upon my boundary. Um, and the person, if they're compassionate and empathetic, they should say, "Oh shit, like I had no clue." Right? Thank you so much for telling me where that line is drawn, and I will never, I will, I'll strive very hard to be aware of things like that, and I won't do it again.
And this ties
So
all the way back into when you're setting your boundaries, how to non-violently communicate your boundaries and your
your
needs.
boundaries, yeah, because you
That's what
can
it's
use
all about.
NVC
It's
to
all the
set your
same.
boundary. That's literally what it
It
is.
all just
Yeah,
meshes with itself. So
it's all
now that
giant
we've
Venn diagrams
covered,
that interconnect everywhere.
yeah, now that we've covered the chunk in 4 separate episodes that are probably like in a span of
10 hours.
8 to 10 hours of
Yeah.
just straight us babbling about how to communicate. So if anyone has any questions, there are 4 episodes that will be on Confidecast YouTube all about nonviolent communication. Now that we've established the 4 steps or the initial 4 steps, and if anyone wants to even dive deeper than that, what was the book?
Nonviolent communication.
The book is literally called Nonviolent
Literally
Communication.
called that. Yeah, I think
And
it's
you
the
can
third
get it
edition or
on
something.
you can get it on Audible if you don't want
Anywhere.
to read
It's
it.
Audible, Amazon, if you don't want to read it. I have it on Audible and I have like 4 copies. And
Yeah.
I give out the copies to everybody I meet.
So
So
big thing right there. And then also just understanding this is something we've touched base on in a lot of other episodes as well. Is there is no finish line. There's always room for growth in everything that you do, including nonviolent communication, including mental health and boundaries. There's always room for growth, but that room for growth is a positive thing. It's not a negative thing. Don't beat yourself up because you're not perfect. Don't beat yourself up because you're not
you're not going to be perfect in the beginning.
Pushing forward better than someone else or whatever it may be. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just take your baby steps, and eventually you'll cover distance, and you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, I covered all this distance and I did this. And you're going to make mistakes in everything you do. You're going to make mistakes. Relationships are going to end. Some that you didn't want to end, some that you may have needed to end, right? And you're going to learn from every single thing that happens. So, Paul says, so the next 4 episodes are the reverse. You're going to teach us incredibly effective, violent conversation, right?
Yeah. We're just taking out back. Yeah.
I'll teach you specifically, Paul.
Josh says, I'm glad you guys are doing this because, like you said, we weren't taught this, and I had no idea this was the thing. Most people don't. Anyone at any age can learn this and apply this to their life. And thanks to you guys, I'll begin to apply this to my life. Much love to you guys. Yeah, Josh, honestly, dude, I don't know whether you like audiobooks or whether you like books or if you hate reading or hate listening, whatever, man. I would really, it's the easiest read ever. And honestly, if you feel connected to the material, it will be the double, triple, quadruple easiest read ever in your entire life. You'll fly through the book because it'll be so applicable to your life. You'll have examples in there that you'll be like, oh my God, if my insert person here spoke to me in this fashion and we had this type of communication, maybe this relationship wouldn't have ended, or maybe this relationship would have gone in a different direction. It's really that impactful. Like, I really do think, because I read that book and I was like, this is fucking crazy. This is like cheat codes on how to communicate to people, right? And obviously you want to be in an empathetic, compassionate driving force for that. You don't want to ever force somebody to act against their own free will, or force somebody to act in a way of out of guilt or of shame, right? You want them to really resonate with what you're saying and saying, wow, I'm enriching your life and I want to do this because I want to contribute to your life force, or life energy, or whatever you want to say. But still, like, the book is incredibly powerful and the material is incredibly powerful. So I'm glad you guys enjoy it, and I'm glad people come in and hang out with us and take a few hours at this point. It's been an hour. Take some time and hang out with us.
Make sure you go follow Mad Michael Gaming.
Make sure
you go follow Team Confide. If you look for Team Confide, there's on Facebook it's Team Confide, but then on YouTube and Instagram it's Confide Cast. I typically am the one running this podcast for the past 10 episodes. I've been on every episode pushing everyone forward. So if you want to keep up with the podcast itself, definitely make sure you go follow me, Casual 69er. And go, if you want to catch up on episodes that you haven't seen, like I said, YouTube, Confidecast, and hit up both of our TikToks. I highly recommend TikTok because it's just short, under 60 seconds, little bites of mental health cookies that you can just obtain. And it just helps you in your day-to-day with taking these baby steps. It kind of shifts your focus. Even if it's just for 20 minutes, at least your brain is starting to approach a different pathway, and you're taking those baby steps to a more positive life. I highly recommend hitting up Casual69er on TikTok and Confidecast on TikTok. Everyone that did show up today, we appreciate you taking the time to be here, to be in chat, to give us your input, and to be a part of the conversation. It means the world to us. It's what keeps us doing what we're doing. And are you good for next week?
Should be, yeah. I'll have to look.
You'll probably see me and Michael next week talking about boundaries. And we'll go from there. So hopefully we can see you guys all at around the same time next Sunday. And yeah, that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm just going to read the last comments here. Hearts Gaming says, definitely good ass topic, guys. There's so many older people that I know who don't know these things whatsoever. 100%, man. Some people go through their life miscommunicating and stepping on toes and just being unempathetic, and they have no clue, right? And I sincerely hope those people make it to a place where they either find NVC or they find somebody who, teaches them something better. Janet says, "Do you say this is on Audible?" Yeah, Nonviolent Communications on Audible. I have it on Audible, or you can buy the print book on Amazon. But yeah, it's literally just nonviolent communication. If you Google NVC Rosenberg, Rosenberg's the guy's name, Marshall Rosenberg, you'll get a million results. There's people who do workshops. There's people who come to your school. There's people who come to your office. There's worksheets. There's workbooks. There's essay portions that you can do regarding it. Like it's a real big thing. So, but I'm glad you guys are interested. I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you so much. And with that
Yes.
being said,
I'm going to go ahead and invite everyone that wants to. There's a group called Team Confide Fans on Facebook. It's a closed group. And that group is completely open for anything Confide related, including ConfideCast. So if you guys you watch our streams and you want to be a part of that content or anything in between, or you want to have conversations with other people that are part of the community, it's a perfect place to do it. Is Team Confide Fans, and that is a group on Facebook. So feel free
thank you, JC, for the link.
to jump in on that, and we will see you guys next week.
We will.